Hi, my name's Matt and I'd like to welcome you to this Sydney Out video, which is part of our MOR Management of Risk Foundation training course. In this video we will be introducing the MOR process, but before we do that we're going to look at some key terms related to the MOR process, starting with probability, which is evaluated likelihood of a threat or opportunity occurring, and it includes the frequency. So for instance, if we were a hotel, the threat that a customer with a booking doesn't show up is a daily occurrence. It has a frequency of every day. Each day we have a booking, we have the uncertainty about whether the customer who's made the booking will or will not show up. In comparison, if we have an annual assessment of our compliance with health and safety regulations or fire regulations, then the frequency of that risk in terms of whether we will pass the assessment or not is yearly. But do remember that the impact on the business could well be greater for the risk that only occurs once a year. So if we fail our health and safety assessment, if we fail our fire assessment, that could stop us trading. If the customer fails to show up for a booking, we've potentially only lost one night's revenue. The next term is impact, the result of a threat or opportunity occurring. So related to the hotel example, if we failed our health and safety assessment or our fire assessment, the impact on the business could be great. We may have to close our hotel or at least not rent any rooms until we can pass the assessment, whereas the impact of a single customer not showing up for a booking might be quite small. We only lose potentially one night or a couple of nights revenue. The next term is proximity, when a threat or opportunity is likely to occur. So in terms of the health and safety assessment, obviously we would know when that was booked in. It may happen at roughly the same time each year, so that's the only time it can occur. Once we've passed it, it can't occur again for another year. In terms of customers not attending, we may set a particular time in the day where if they haven't arrived by a particular time, we assume they're not coming. But of course, once they have arrived, then they can't not arrive, and that risk has passed. We'd also need to look at whether the proximity changed throughout the year at different times. So one of the things that hospitality venues have found during the pandemic is that the likelihood of customers with bookings not showing up has increased dramatically, to the extent that they've taken risk mitigation actions to take non-returnable deposits from customers for bookings. So if you show up, you're fine, your deposit goes against your bill, but if you don't show up, they keep that non-returnable deposit. And then we have two related terms, inherent and residual. So inherent before any action has been taken to manage the risk, residual after the risk response has been successfully applied. So in the example I just gave you for restaurants taking a non-returnable deposit, the inherent risk before they applied that risk mitigation strategy was they would lose revenue, their profit and revenue for the booking completely. Their residual risk is the difference between their average take on a table and the deposit they take. So I think their mitigation action is more focused on reducing the probability by saying, well, if a customer has deposited £50, they won't want to not show up and lose that £50 for nothing. The next term is goals, the key outcomes of the process. So whether that's the identify risks process, where the key outcome is we have identified all relevant risks, or the assess risk process, where the key outcome is we have adequately assessed all the identified risks. The next term is inputs, which is information required and transformed by the process. So what information do we take in and how is it transformed. So for the assess risks process, we clearly need the list of identified risks, and that list will be transformed because we will be putting more information on it and we will be prioritizing it. Which leads us on to outputs. Information produced by the process and used by the next process step. So once we've assessed the risks, we've got a list of assessed risks, and that will feed into the plan process. Once we've got our plan, that feeds into the implement process. Techniques. Recognize tools and techniques that may be applied to the process step. So for instance, for the assess risk process, we may use 3-point estimating, where we have best case, worst case, most likely case related to the impact. For assess evaluate step, we may be using Monte Carlo simulation, and we'll come on to that when we look at those particular steps. And the final term is tasks. Actions that need to be completed to transform inputs into outputs with the aid of techniques. On the slide to my left is the risk management process, and we can see all the steps. Identify, assess, plan, implement and communicate. The identify step split into identify the context and identify the risks. The assess step split into assess, estimate and assess, evaluate, where we estimate individual risks and evaluate the totality of risk to the activity. And at the heart of the process, communicate. Which brings us to the end of this video introducing the MOR process. In the next series of videos, we will go through each step in detail. So join me there. Until you do, have a great day.